Hi. So today I wanted to just think a little bit about a subject that probably we don't talk about very often, which is dying well. And maybe that makes you want to not listen to any more already. But I think it's really important that we think about dying well, both within the medical profession, within our communities, and especially at the moment when death's in our face, isn't it? It's like the number of deaths that have happened because of COVID-19 are announced in the media every day, and we're very, very aware of our mortality and the fact that one thing that's certain is that we will all our bodies will die one day. And I think I've been aware for many years, sort of within my work as a doctor, um, that how people die is really important. What's a good death, and what makes a good death. Um, I work some shifts in care homes, often out of hours, seeing people who are sick at weekends and evenings, and often the people in the care homes are really, really unwell, and I have to have conversations often with family around about what do we treat, what don't we treat, what's compassionate, what's kind, what would the person have wanted, what do the family want. And I think that over the years something has probably shifted with that a little bit, in that maybe because medicine can do so many things now, so much is available, that it's easy to have the expectation that there'll always be something that we can do. There'll always be another tablet we can try, or an intervention that we can do that will actually save someone's life. And our population is older than it used to be. If we went back 20, 30 years, people died earlier. The whole spectrum of illness is different because we do manage to keep people well and alive a lot longer than we used to because of all the advances that there've been. But there comes the point where actually it's time for someone to go. It's time for someone to leave. And that can be really, really difficult, particularly, in our society where the expectation is that we can do something, that the doctors will be able to do something, and or that something can happen that's going to make it be different. And it's hard to face the pain. It's hard to face loss. Um, but actually, I wonder sometimes whether that's actually making it not so good for the person who's dying, who's ready to go. It's the end of their lifespan, and conversations are not had, and things are not raised and discussed, and things are maybe left unsaid that actually could have been really helpful both for the person and for the family. Um, I think it's really relevant at the moment because with COVID-19, there's the expectation that anyone, whatever age, however sick, that if you go into hospital, there'll be all these things available that can hopefully save your life, ventilators and all the extra care. And it may be that actually there isn't. Maybe actually we do have to ration care. Maybe we do have to start to have conversations around, what do we actually do if there isn't anything else that can be done? What are the things that really matter? What what would we want to be tidied up in our lives? What would we want to say? What would we want our loved ones to be left with when we go? What all sorts of things that maybe we never have those kind of conversations. And I just think maybe we should be starting to have those conversations, not just within the medical profession, but just in our communities and families. And I wonder what it is that stops us. I suspect it's around fear of death, fear of knowing what happens at death, where do we go, what actually happens to us. We hold on to the now because it's familiar and it's what we know, but actually for all of us, one day we die, and we don't actually discuss it very well. Certainly in the UK we don't. It may well be in other cultures and countries that is discussed more openly, um, but I think here it isn't increasingly so. Um, as a doctor, when I've raised the fact of someone being near death, I find it's really appreciated by the family that I've had that kind of discussion with them, and spent time with them and listened to them and found out what they would hope and what their fears are, and for the patient, what their fears are. I've sometimes done that earlier as well. If someone's had a difficult diagnosis and you know that maybe their lifespan is short now, to actually start to have those conversations. What are they frightened of? What do they hope for? What do they think about what happens when they die? And and we can have those conversations again, not just within the medical profession, but just with each other a little bit, maybe with a friend. Be an interesting topic of conversation for our daily exercise walk with a friend. But seriously, it's maybe good to start to have some of those conversations and make ourselves think a little bit about it. Um, it's interesting that when my mum died, she died 9 years ago now, and she had ovarian cancer. So we knew that maybe her lifespan wasn't going to be very long now. But she died very suddenly in the end. And interestingly, on that day, she'd talked about some of the things earlier that she really wanted. She wanted to celebrate her golden wedding anniversary, and she wanted to celebrate Christmas. And she actually died 2 days after Christmas, very suddenly collapsed and went. And I was round at the house within a few minutes of that happening, and there while paramedics tried to resuscitate her, and I was there with my dad, and we were both just so aware that her spirit had left, that her body was there, but her spirit had gone. And my mum and dad have the same faith I have in God, who's bigger than I am, a God who loves me, a God who's a spirit, and that I'm a spirit being. I live in my body, but actually my body isn't who I am fundamentally, and that our spirits carry on living, and ultimately when we die, we'll go to either our Father in heaven or to another Father who isn't so good for us. And we have these choices that we can make in our lives here and now about what will happen, and which father do which God, who's the God who's bigger than us, what's actually true, what do we really believe? Because what's true isn't changed by what we believe. So I could believe that when I die I come back as a tortoise, or I could believe that when I die I come back, everything ends, that there's just nothing there. Or I can believe, as I do, that actually I will live on. My body will live on, and because I've received the gift of Jesus and what He did for me, that I will be with my Father God for eternity. And the truth of what actually happens to us isn't going to be affected by what we believe. What's true is true, whether we believe it or not. So it's actually really important we start to have some of these conversations and start to think about what's really true, and talk about what happens when we leave this earth, or when we leave our bodies. For my mum, I know that she's not dead. I know she's still alive, and I know that the veil is thin between where she is and where I am, and I can't see her physically, but I know she's still alive, and that is massive. And I know that I had some opportunities to say some things to her, because we had some of those conversations, and I think it's just really important that we can do that and actually address some of these things, some of these taboo things maybe that we hide away, that we don't want to look at out of fear, and out of fear of offending people, upsetting people, and actually I would say, both from my own personal experience and my experience as a doctor, my experience of having difficult conversations with people, that actually it's a really, really worthwhile thing to do, and that a lot of good comes out of it, to enable good deaths, to enable people to die well, and to enable the family that's left behind to carry on as well as they can in what's a really difficult situation afterwards.